Today was a towering day for justice. Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the crimes she committed against these survivors and so many others.
I felt a sense of calm come up over me that I haven't felt in almost 3 decades.
Yes, Ghislaine must die in prison.
For most of the 90s, socialite Ghislaine Maxwell did the unthinkable, plying young girls with gifts, wealth and connections to lure them into meeting her one-time partner, Jeffrey Epstein.
I have spent the last 17 years in my own prison for what she, Jeffrey, and all the co-conspirators did to me.
The power couple worked together to molest underage girls hundreds of times over the years, leaving their victims with a lifetime of suffering.
This is incredibly traumatic for the victims, the survivors. This was an international sex trafficking ring that spanned across the world.
8 of those survivors shared their stories with the court. Maxwell telling them she was sorry for their pain and that she regrets ever meeting Jeffrey Epstein.
Her statement felt like a very hollow apology to me. She did not take responsibility for the crimes.
It was probably the closest thing she's ever come to acknowledgement of anything in her life.
I wish she was sorry when she was busy forcing me into a room to be raped.
Maxwell wasn't sorry enough to accept her sentence, continuing to blame Epstein, who died 3 years ago, for all of it.
Glenn will appeal this case. We all know that the person who should have been sentenced today escaped accountability.
To think that she's being charged for something that Jeffrey Epstein did is arrogant. She was charged with the crimes she committed and only a fraction of them.
Survivors, though, are undeterred, hopeful the 20-year sentence will put other predators on notice.
Today showed us that individuals can be held accountable irrespective of power and privilege.
If you commit these crimes, you will be punished. If you facilitate these crimes, you will be punished.
Today is a day I didn't think would ever happen.
Lisa Bloom is a US attorney and has represented 8 of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers. She joined us a little earlier.
Lisa, this sentence is decades in the making. How are you feeling tonight?
It's a monumental day for justice for victims of sexual abuse. As you say, it took so long to get to this day, but Ghislaine Maxwell is now going to spend probably the rest of her life behind bars.
So the sentence was 20 years, which is a hefty sentence really in anyone's language. Do the victims that you represent feel that that is justice?
Yes, my clients and I feel this was a very good outcome. We appreciate Judge Nathan giving even more than the sentencing guidelines called for. That was a 15 to 19-year sentence. Ghislaine Maxwell asked for 5 years. That was clearly not enough. And the judge really took into account the seriousness of these crimes and how she has harmed so many women.
Well, Epstein's criminal orbit, it's alleged to extend to world leaders, billionaires and royalty. So even with this result now, this sentence, this latest chapter in this saga, is the Epstein battle actually over?
Well, great question. And we never can really know the answer to that. We know that there were others who were mentioned at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial as being recruiters who also brought girls and women to him to be sexually abused. Perhaps we'll see prosecutions of those people next.
But even on Maxwell's own case, not necessarily over, because her lawyer has said that she's very confident she will win on appeal. Do you think she's got any reason to be confident, or what the grounds of that appeal might be?
Well, lawyers always say that, and it doesn't mean that there's really grounds. I think the best ground she has for appeal is the juror who we heard about a few months ago, who lied on his intake form and said he had not been sexually abused. And then after the verdict, he gave media interviews and said he had been sexually abused. And he brought that up during jury deliberations. Now, there's nothing wrong with him doing that. And people who are abuse victims are not excluded from juries. But the fact that he lied about it, the defense tried to get a new trial already on that ground. It was denied. And now they'll surely raise that on appeal.
Lisa, what did the women you represent make of, let's call it an apology, from Maxwell in court today?
Yeah, we call it the non-apology apology. It's obviously very carefully written. She does not apologize for what she did, the choices she made, the conduct she engaged in. Instead, she points the finger at Jeffrey Epstein. She says she wishes she never met him. Well, that's probably true. And she says she's sorry to hear about the pain that the victims have expressed, but she takes no responsibility for it. And that's what an apology really should do.
Now, this 20-year jail term for Ghislaine Maxwell is really a win for women and for the Me Too movement as a whole. But it is arriving under the cloud of Roe v. Wade's dismantling by the Supreme Court over there in the States. Your mum, Gloria Allred, represented Roe, a woman named Norma McCorvey, in that case. What was your reaction to it being overruled, and what was your mum's?
Well, it's just heartbreaking. My mother, my daughter, who's also an attorney, and I were really devastated, as are, tens of millions of American women, that we have gone backwards, that we have lurched backwards, that teenage girls and poor women will be forced to carry pregnancies to term that they don't want. It's just shocking, but there's nothing to do but fight on state by state, and that's what we're going to do.
A lot seems to fall to state officials then in that case, and several of them have confirmed that they won't be cooperating in abortion investigations or participating in any extraditions or anything like that. How much of a difference does that make?
It makes a big difference. I live here in the state of California. I'm very proud of my state. We have on the ballot a state constitutional amendment to enshrine the right to choose in our state constitution. I think that will pass. The governor has already announced privacy protections so that if women travel to California for abortions, that information will not be shared back home at their state where it's illegal. But we really have gone back 50 years, and I think it's an embarrassment in the world, frankly, that this has happened in our country.
Lisa Bloom, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been an odd week, hasn't it? Because we saw the decision today, the 20-year sentence seems to be looking to right a very, very long evil that has happened. But then it's also coming at the same time as the dismantling of Roe v. Wade.
It's just really, I don't know about you, I just can't, it's all I'm thinking about. Like, I'm angry and hurt and scared, and currently 8 months pregnant with a baby that I am very happy to be carrying and bringing to term and having. But the thought of someone telling me to have to do this against my will, who doesn't know me or my body, is just outrageous. I'm fiercely pro-choice, and just what makes it even worse is that it's actively going backwards. It's not even women were trying to get some more rights, or it's taking a right that was already there and actively taking it away. And what's even worse than that is it doesn't feel like it's the end. Like, it doesn't feel like they're finished with this step.
Like this horrible precursor to what may come now.
It just feels like such a no-brainer. It's like, it's clearly nothing to do with you, what I'm doing with my body, so leave it alone. And I feel like there's a lot of, comments that I've had is people going, well, it's America, it's not here. But I feel like, one, have some empathy for humans and women, and two, we can't take for granted these rights that we have now of having access to safe and legal abortion, which I hate as a sentence that I have to say.
I know. As Lisa Bloom just said there, it's heartbreaking.